Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Dr. Jeff Williamson about shifts in the workforce and how human capital is utilized. Dr. Jeff Williamson, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you so much. I love having these conversations and looking forward to talking with you more.
Yes, I am excited. We're going to have a really awesome, fun conversation around the shifting nature of work and shifts in the workplace and how human capital is utilized. What we've seen in recent decades in terms of that shift and really what we've seen over the last 18 plus months in terms of this acceleration of the shifting nature of work during the COVID period. As we get started, I wanted to share Jeff's bio with everybody. Dr. Jeff Williamson is founder of CMG Group, an executive coaching and people development practice. Prior to launching CMG in 2017, he was a dean, executive director, and professor of organizational leadership, serving in higher education for over 30 years. He is the author of Power of 168, Shaping Moments, and regularly teaches and speaks on topics such as discovering your strengths, building a strengths-based organization, personal leadership, leadership paradigms, leading change, coaching, mentoring, and conflict resolution. He is a Gallup certified strengths coach who holds a master's degree in speech communication and a doctor of education degree in leadership. He is certified in fundraising management by Indiana University, Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, and was a postdoctoral student at the Ohio State University Fisher College of Business. And you're a man after my own heart. I am also a professor of organizational leadership, and
Right.
I'm still steeped in the academic world and
It's a big place.
get to do all of that. But I really, I like doing research. I like teaching students. I like serving at the university, but I really get excited about the consulting work, the coaching work, and conversations like these on my podcast to be able to talk in practical terms about how all of this is actually impacting real folks out there.
Yeah, higher ed's a great place to be. One of my top strengths is learner. So working in an environment like that for these many years, it inspires me still. I still do teach some, but it's just, it's not my primary focus anymore. But I'm a teacher at heart, so I can't get away from the classroom, whether it's on my screen or in a classroom.
Sure. Well, very good. As we launch on in, I just want to see if there's anything else you wanted to share about yourself by way of your background before we really get into the conversation.
Yeah. First of all, I was listening and thinking, gosh, I need to shorten my bio. That's a lot. But in all of those roles and all those different years of experience, the thing that's central to me is it's really all about relationships. It's about helping people grow. And, that's at the heart of human capital, is the beautiful resources and gifts that people have and how we can work together and use those. So whatever my title has been, whatever my role has been, I'm a coach and a teacher, and my heart is really about relationships.
Well said. And that's really where I try to see my focus anyways. I'm not sure I'm always perfect at that, but it's certainly my intention that I, treating people as unique individual and, genuine human beings with authentic
Right.
experiences, like really
Hmm.
just seeing them as they are and helping them to
Hmm.
recognize their potential and then reach to fulfill it. I think that's kind of the epitome of what leadership is all about, and certainly what I try to do in my framing around leadership. Uh,
Hmm.
so maybe before we talk about the nature of work, the shifting workforce more generally, we can talk about higher ed specifically, since you
Sure.
spent 30 years in higher ed.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, Tell us a little bit about some of the shifts that you saw within the higher ed space over several decades, and then we can piggyback off of that to talk about the broader
Hmm.
workforce.
Yeah. Well, naturally, I'm not, it's not going to surprise anyone to just think about how the technological shift that we've seen in education. Going back even just 15 years or so, the idea of a hybrid course was this newer thing where people would maybe be in a classroom a few Saturdays and then they do work between then online, and it was this new thing, and accrediting bodies were trying to figure it out, and how do we do this, and those kinds of things. So certainly the common thread of shifting in technology over those years has been different. I remember, teaching courses when that was the new thing, or writing curriculum differently because it was going to be delivered online. And so, and when I look back, I think what we called online courses back then was really a correspondence course where they could get their documents on their computer, and by what we can do now with video and audio and live chat and those kind of things, it's just come so far in how we deliver education, not just online, but even the way we do in-person education, and learning management systems, and the platforms where all those things happen. That's been a big one, both in the classroom. And then I think in the years that I was a dean, to introduce my dear friends in financial aid many years ago to the idea of having online applications and doing things online, when they had been so used to, oh, we have to have a copy of that on paper in their folder. And it's like, well, no, we don't really. We need to have an image of that. And so the technology has been a really big piece of some of those shifts I've seen over the last few decades.
Yeah, and I haven't been in higher ed for as long as you. I taught my first course as a grad student back in 2005. And
Mhm.
so, I go back a decade and a half,
Mhm.
and then full-time capacity for the past 12 years.
It's still
Um,
significant.
and even during that time, I've seen
Mhm.
just tremendous shifts in the
Oh,
higher ed space.
right.
And I often tell people, I'll have students come to me all the time and they'll ask me about grad school, and they'll ask me about doing a doctorate. And because the professor life's a pretty awesome life. I love being a professor. I love the autonomy, the flexibility. I love having a home base at my institution, and then the
Mhm.
flexibility and freedom to go off and do anything else
Mhm.
I want.
It's a good life.
It's awesome. But it's the gauntlet of going through the doctoral program isn't for everybody, and
Mhm.
it's getting harder and harder to find those coveted tenure track positions. and
Mhm.
and the kind of the role and the nature of what I do as a professor has shifted, even in
Mhm.
the 12-13 years that I've been a full-time professor. And so when I'm talking to students about that, I just want them to be aware, like, kind of this old fashioned notion of like what a professor is, that's often portrayed in me
Mhm.
in TV shows or movies.
Yeah.
That's becoming less and less common. That does still
Yeah.
exist in certain
Yeah.
institutions, but that's less and
Mhm.
less common. And
Mhm.
I spend way more time directly interacting with students as a mentor and a coach,
Mhm.
and
Yes.
working on projects and involving
Mhm.
students in research and those sorts of things,
Yes.
than I even did, a decade or a little over a decade
Mhm.
ago.
Mhm. And the cool thing is, the things you just described, those are some of the greatest sources of joy for me. Mentoring, coaching, impacting, influencing, leading, helping them clarify their own thoughts. I mean, a lot of times when I talk to people, whether I'm coaching them on a formal agreement or I'm just simply a friend they trust and they bouncing ideas off of me, it's like they kind of work their way back to what they know to be the truth for them. And I just kind of get to be a good listener and to ask some questions that help to draw them out a little bit, but I think most of the time, not always, but most of the time, people are like, they kind of have somewhere deep in them what they really want to do with all their heart, or what they feel this drawing or even a calling to. So a lot of times my job is to say, could you tell me why that you seem really excited talking about that? Can you tell me more about why that excites you? Or wow, you're really passionate about that. Where did that come from? When did that start? You see those, and you do that all the time. But those are the kind of questions that help people say, when I was 10 years old, I had this experience and it really impressed me, or it really motivated me. And I've always had my focus on that ever since. And I'm like, man, embrace that, figure out what to do with that. And that's such a high calling to get to be that person in a student's life.
Yeah. And so I've really enjoyed that myself. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the technological advances, I think of
Mm-hmm.
learning management systems from when I was a student, back in the late 90s, early 2000s as an
Mm-hmm.
undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
how far they've come when I was a student to when I was
Mm-hmm.
first a professor, first teaching courses to now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's night and day. It's so
It
just
is.
so much better.
Yeah.
Thankfully for
Yeah.
students and the student
Mm-hmm.
experience and for student success. So all of that's wonderful. Now, of course,
Yeah.
all of that, this is just a microcosm of like the bigger picture of
It
everything that's
is.
shifting in the workforce. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say with all the shifts in higher ed, there's been even more rapid shifts
Mm-hmm.
across industries as a whole. So let's talk a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more about that
Mm-hmm.
now.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's no secret to anyone that the last couple years have been unsettling, have been challenging, have been difficult in many, many ways. But having said that, I also feel like not just in higher ed, but in business and maybe even in just in our lives, the pressures and the quarantines of the pandemic and the time shift that has happened for most of us is that it's kind of like it broke some things that need to be broken. And then it's given us a great opportunity to say, could we? Do I want to do life differently now that we've experienced the last 18 months? Should we? Do I want to do teaching and education differently, or business? And so we see those kinds of things that it's kind of like, I think, inertia sometimes can set in, and we just think, well, yeah, that's a good idea. We'll get to it. Well, we just kind of got punched in the nose a couple of years ago with the pandemic, and we had to do some things that we maybe been dragging our feet. And so, as painful and devastating as that has been in some sectors of our world, there are pieces of that where I've looked at it and I'm thought, I'm not going back. I learned some lessons about me, or I learned some lessons about teaching or people in general. And it's never all bad. My dad, when he was still around, he used to say, no matter how bad things are, there's always something to be grateful for, something to be thankful for. And I've found that to be true, even in these weird, challenging, painful times we've been living now a year and a half.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations. Yeah. And so what are some of those specific things you've seen? You highlighted a few of the
Mm-hmm.
kind of the accelerated shifts that COVID has
Mm-hmm.
caused as we've
Right.
come into this pandemic moment.
Yeah.
But we have seen major disruption just
Mm-hmm.
in the way human
Mm-hmm.
capital is utilized. Right
Yeah.
now, some of that is just simply remote work, utilizing
Mm-hmm.
technology to enhance remote work, hybrid
Mm-hmm.
work. But
Mm-hmm.
what are some of those things that you've seen in the last decade, leading into the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and then the last 18
Yeah.
months?
Yeah, I think the last couple of years has really shined a light on the mental health of our nation and our world. There's been a better focus on those types of things. I also see that companies are realizing the opportunities they have globally, where maybe 10 years ago we kind of had a little bit more of a provincial mindset that it's like, well, I'm near Chicago and that's going to have to be my main base of operations, and now here I am chatting with you in Utah. And so businesses are learning to run differently. I remember working with a company that was a tech engineering firm maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and they were already doing international remote teams long before it was a thing, long before we realized that we could run companies from different continents. And I remember as I worked with them, I was so fascinated. I'm like, tell me about this. And I'm like, well, we have a team in Poland, and we have a team in England, and we have a team here in Chicago. And even though I think that was so cool, I was just like, I was blown away even just 6, 7 years ago that they were being so successful. And like a lot of companies, they later just let their lease run out and move completely to remote. And this is at least 5 years ago. And then fast forward to today, and
Yeah,
we're having to do that.
and just to add to that, so
Yeah.
having teams in remote teams or even
Mm-hmm.
teams in physical locations scattered around the
Mm-hmm.
globe,
Mm-hmm.
for really large multinational firms, that's been a
Mm-hmm.
thing for a while. And
Right.
coordinating that can be difficult, but organizations have done that. But what you started to see even a decade
Mm-hmm.
ago, 6, 7 years ago, is
Mm-hmm.
more of these kind of smaller firms starting to do
Yes.
that, where you just had small little hubs. And
Yep.
now what you see is it's gone even beyond that. So now I can have a team of say 5 people or 10 people,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no two of us in the same country. Like, we're scattered
Mm-mm.
all over the world. And
Right.
so really, because of the technologies, it's totally possible. The only real constraint is time zones, and just trying to make
Right.
sure that you're balancing how you're dealing with people's
Mm-hmm.
their time. But
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, it's completely possible. So distributed workforce, virtual
Mm-hmm.
workforce, all of
Mm-hmm.
this is just really sped up. Where the
Mm-hmm.
trajectory was already moving that direction, but it's just sped up
Mm-hmm.
dramatically over the last 18
Right.
months. So
Yeah.
that's a huge shift in how human capital has been utilized, and it's opened up a global labor market,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now that,
Yeah.
like you said, you're in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
traditionally the thinking was I need to hire people from right here around
Right.
Chicago or
Right.
within commuting distance, or I need
Mm-hmm.
to hire someone who I can transplant here,
Mm-hmm.
and they can move across country and they can land in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people are questioning that. They're like, well, why? That's hugely disruptive and
Yeah.
expensive, and
Yeah.
it cuts out of your potential labor pool like
Mm-hmm.
the vast majority of all the
It
qualified
does.
people that are out there. So there's,
Yeah.
the more we think about it, the more we're like, of course that doesn't really even make
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like, why don't we
Mm-hmm.
just allow for
Mm-hmm.
leveraging all of
Mm-hmm.
the skills, the capabilities of people all over the world, regardless of where they are. If,
Exactly.
if they have the skills, we can
Mm-hmm.
use them in our organization. I think that's a tremendous shift that's happened just in the last couple of years.
It is, and it does open up such a talent opportunity, and where we find our human capital and how we work. Because you think of a place like Chicago, which is a great city, but there are people who live in other places who would never move to this region. They're like, I don't have a winter coat. I don't want a winter coat. Well, now you could go, great, stay in Utah, great, stay in Florida or Texas or wherever you might live. You're our top candidate, and we want you to work for us, and we happen to be based in Chicago or Milwaukee or wherever. And so, yeah, the pool of talent and the acceleration, I think, of the talent wars has come with that. where we can go wherever we need to find the right person or the team of people for this role. It's really been huge just to watch that over the last 5-10 years.
Yeah, and there's definitely been some organizations that have resisted this shift, and it's to
Mm-hmm.
their detriment.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they're just going to be losing the battle of talent
Mm-hmm.
and trying
Yeah.
to get in, attract and
Mm-hmm.
retain really great people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think even those who are dragging their feet, they're going to have to get there, and they're going to have to get there
Yeah.
quick, or they're going to just be out of the game altogether.
Agreed. I mean, you think about the companies, all of the many of it. I mean, probably most of us, higher ed or elsewhere, we worked on I worked on my patio two springs ago, and my kitchen table, and here in my home office, and now there's this mix. Of course, some companies have said, well, that was temporary and we needed to do that so everybody could be safe. But now things are somewhat better and we're going to bring all our people back. And then they go, whoops, just kidding. We have a spike in the Delta variant. And they're like, whoa, we're not going to do that now. And then others are just like, we're going 100% remote. We're selling our property. We're not going to have super expensive land and facilities and infrastructure all over the place. We're gonna ship a laptop and a modem to all of our employees and just say, hey, here you go. You're on from this time to that time. And we're working that way now.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe one more thing I wanted to explore with you a little bit before we close out our time today.
Mhm.
Uh, what have you learned over these past 18 plus months in
Mhm.
terms of time management, your
Mhm.
core values, principles, and the guiding
Mhm.
priorities for how you're
Yeah.
going about your work and how you're working with your team? I know
Mhm.
for myself that the pandemic has caused me to self-reflect and really challenge a lot of kind of what I was used to, the like you
Mhm.
said, the inertia and the status quo of like my work
Mhm.
life, that most
Mhm.
of that's been challenged, and I've definitely
Mhm.
come to some new realizations. So what have been
Mhm.
some of those realizations for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, besides just the fact that I can work from anywhere, that I have Wi-Fi, is that those core values that you mentioned are, what things give me the greatest joy? What things are the most fulfilling ways that I can serve other people? And so, a part of this 18-month window has been some of that what that you mentioned. It's been times for reflection to say, hey, I'm working differently right now. Do I want to continue this, or do I want to go back to 8 to 5? I'm on campus in my office and I have to be available and I have to have hours and have to. And there's a lot of joy for my work in higher ed. So I don't want to misdirect anybody on that. But working differently and integrating those things like, uh, getting up and taking a 15-20 minute walk over the lunch hour. Yes, I could have done that on campus, but it's different to do that these days. So I think, a better integration of health and activity levels and all those kinds of things have improved during this time, because I think we had to be more intentional in a lot of things. And then because we kind of had forced separation at times from people we loved in other places that know they can't fly and know they can't come visit right now, or I'm in quarantine and those kind of things. I think it really helped to refocus those central relationships that mean the most to me, and just the power of those connections, and not wanting those to drift away because I'm so busy and have my head on my computer or have my head in the clouds, trying to do some work, or being super busy. So in some ways, I mentioned earlier in the call, I think some things that needed broken were broken over the last several months. And some of those I've said, we'll wish it farewell and give them a nice farewell, but that's not coming back, for me personally. And so, I think it narrowed my focus to those things that matter most to me. And that includes work. It's not just like, hey, I'm not going to work anymore because I want to have more joy in my life. I find great joy in my work because it's about people and relationships and helping them to grow and get better. That's the strengths coach in me, learner and strategic. Is like, I want to help people figure out their journey and have the greatest joy and fulfillment, and then service to other people. That's a big one for me too.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Jeff, it has just been a real pleasure. This time has flown by. It's been a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate all of your insights and all the wisdom that you have shared with me and my listeners. Before we wrap up today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your current coaching and consulting work, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I can't believe the time has gone already. But if folks would like to learn more about my work, they can go to my website, which is www.coachmentorguide.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Dr. Jeff Williamson. I am on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. If they want to email me, they can find that on the website. Send me a note, and I'll look forward to conversations and contact down the road. When we think about a final word, human capital, what we do is always with other people, right? We do things for other people, but we can't do them without people. And so this topic of human capital and how we can learn and innovate and do these things differently, that's some of the joy, is finding new ways to be more effective and to serve people even better as we go along.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much, Jeff. It has just been a real pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Jeff and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.